Sai Ram, Vanakkam, Namaskar, Vandanam, Assalamu Alaikum, and Sat Sri Akal. We looked at honesty last week. Today, on the basis of honesty, we move on to another word called courage. Courage. What is courage? Well, is it physical? Is it mental? Is it emotional? Well, it's a mental or moral strength to venture, to persevere, to withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. That's what courage means. So therefore, it is a virtue, right? This basically means that courage has a lot to do with mindset, right? Hence the reference to moral or mental strength, right? Now, what you need to note here is it is not something physical, but at times, the manifestation of courage can mean something that you see from a physical perspective. For example, acting bravely, but that bravery only comes forth if you have sufficient courage at the back of it. So courage is mental or moral strength, but when it manifests, sometimes you can see it in physical action. Did you know there are many types of courage, right? But I'm going to talk to you about 6 types of courage. Physical courage, social courage, moral courage, emotional courage, intellectual courage, and spiritual courage. So physical, social, moral, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual, right? So what does physical courage mean? Physical courage means to keep going, being resilient, to have a sense of balance and awareness, physical courage. Social courage, to put it very simply, to be yourself unapologetically. To be yourself unapologetically. Moral courage, what is that? Doing the right thing even when it is uncomfortable or unpopular, or it might put you in bad light. That's moral courage. Emotional courage, feeling all your emotions, whether it's positive or negative, without guilt, without attachment. That is emotional courage. Intellectual courage, to learn, unlearn, and relearn. To learn, unlearn, and relearn with an open mind. Intellectual courage. And lastly, spiritual courage, living with purpose and meaning through a heart-centered approach towards all life, all beings, so that you can be at one with yourself in peace always. That is spiritual courage. Because sometimes we do things that tends to make us happy and others unhappy, right? So when the spiritual courage means doing things for everybody and everything regardless of your own self. So it is a heart-centered approach, right? So a story for you, right? Courage to always choose to do the right thing, right? So basically, this is a story about a ship in the middle of a shipwreck and a lifeboat that reached that ship on time. So it's a story about a ship in the middle of a shipwreck and a lifeboat that reached that ship that was sinking in the right time. So anyway, this ship was going and then it had some problems. It began to sink, right? But where the ship was sinking, around that ship, there were 3 other ships, right, at different distances, right? So the first one was called the Samson. The Samson was approximately like 7 miles away from the sinking ship. Only 7 miles. They could have got there really fast. But you know what they did? They just carried on. Why? Because the crew on board the ship had been involved in shipping illegal stuff, and they were hunting seals, which were illegal at the time. So they turned their backs at the ship to a ship that was sinking because they didn't want to get caught. Why? They didn't have the courage. Okay. Sometimes, courage is not about insane bravery. Don't get it wrong. Yeah. Sometimes courage is not about insane bravery. It's just simply about having the guts to let go what is important to you because someone else is in dire need. But obviously the crew of the Samson did not possess this quality, this characteristic, this attribute, no integrity. So that ship went off, right? 14 miles away, right? There was another ship near the ship this was sinking. This is called the Californian. The Californian saw the distress signals as it was, within eyeshot. But they were surrounded by ice and it was like nighttime and probably not very comfortable for them to move. Now, the captain wanted to help, but he did not want to risk his own ship and crew in invading through the icy waters, and obviously the ice blocks there. So he says, I'll just wait until the weather gets a little bit light, or the day turns to a little bit of light, so we can, tread the waters carefully and go. Right? When it's always someone else, we will try and inject a bit of delay. And the Californian is an exact example of that. The third ship was approximately 57 miles away from the sinking ship. 57 miles. Remember, the first ship was 7, closest, the Samson. They turned their backs, no courage. The second ship, 14 miles, they had courage, but they postponed, they deferred it a little bit so that, they are more comfortable to go when it is clear, when the ice is melted, and all those kind of considerations. But this ship, the third ship, was 57 miles away. When they heard the cries over the radio, the captain of the ship just said, Lord, help me and be with me. And he shouted on the radio, turn the ship and we shall go towards the sinking ship. The third ship was called the Carpathia, right? The Carpathia. And the shipwreck it sailed to, the ship that was sinking, that ship was the Titanic. Yes, the Titanic, the famous movie, The Titanic. That is the ship that was sinking. And this ship that went, which was 57 miles away, it went to save. You know how many lives they saved? Of course, they had some casualties, fatalities, but they saved more than 700 lives that night. 705 lives, to be precise, were saved because one man had the courage to look beyond his own comfort, beyond his own, sense of, what is good to do at this time or that time or the other time. And that man was none other than Captain Arthur Rostrom, the man who simply said, turn the ship around. We are heading towards the sinking ship. That is a wonderful example of courage. Maya Angelou, right? Maya Angelou, historian. She said, courage is the most important of all virtues because without courage, you cannot practice any other virtue consistently. How beautiful is that? Courage is the most important of all virtues because without courage, you cannot practice any other virtues consistently, she said. And courage is knowing what not to fear. Plato said that. Courage is knowing what not to fear, And the Dalai Lama said, the secret to happiness is freedom. And the secret to freedom is courage. Dalai Lama. He said, the secret to happiness is freedom. And the secret to freedom is courage. And finally, Vivekananda said, strength is letting go when you want to hold on. Courage is moving forward when you fear what lies ahead. And wisdom is listening when you want to be heard. So, in order to have the strength, you must have the courage to exercise the wisdom. Until I see you next week, stay blessed.